Good morning and welcome to the Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfick Farzan, where we bring you all the latest developing stories here at home and across the world. Now, the aviation industry suffered a very tragic incident yesterday as an Air India flight bound to London crashed immediately after takeoff. Now, an Air India Boeing 7878 Dreamliner carrying 242 people crashed immediately after takeoff from Ahmedabad airport last afternoon in one of the worst aviation tragedies in India. Now, there were 232 passengers and 10 crew on the flight, which was headed to London. One person, the passenger of seat number 11A, survived the crash. In a post on X at 12:41 this morning, Air India confirmed 241 people had died. The passengers comprised 169 Indian nationals, 53 British nationals, 7 Portuguese nationals and 1 Canadian national. The survivor is a British national of Indian origin. Now, the plane slammed into a hostel for doctors of a medical college, killing 5 students as well. Now, a video of the aircraft flying low and struggling to gain altitude shows the plane slamming into the ground and exploding in a massive ball of fire at approximately 1:38 p.m. Indian time. It was loaded with fuel since it was flying a long distance to London. Shortly after takeoff, the pilot had sent a mayday call. There was no response after that to repeated calls from the air traffic controller, according to reports from India. Now, Indian Home Minister Amit Shah has confirmed that he met with the sole survivor at the hospital. A doctor had said that he had examined the survivor, whom he identified as Vishwakumar Ramesh. Another medic said Ramesh told him that immediately after the plane took off, it began descending and suddenly split into two, throwing him out before a loud explosion. Boeing has also issued a statement about Air India Flight 171. The statement says, "We are in contact with Air India regarding Flight 171 and stand ready to support them." The statement also goes on to note, "Our thoughts are with the passengers, crew, first responders and all affected." Now, at the same time, another developing story from overseas, this time in the Middle East. Israel has launched strikes against Iran early this morning, targeting the nuclear program and its long-range missile capabilities. Now, CNN, quoting an Israeli source, said that the strikes were a preemptive, precise, combined offensive that included dozens of targets across Iran. There was no U.S. involvement or U.S. assistance in the strike. This was mentioned by Secretary of State Mark Rubio. Israel has banned schools, social gatherings and non-essential work as it braces for retaliation from its strikes in Iran. Iran has temporarily closed its airspace over the capital, Tehran. Now, this is a developing story we are following here at Newsfirst, and stay with us for more details on this story. Now, as global economic uncertainty continues to cast a shadow over emerging markets, the International Monetary Fund has reiterated its commitment to supporting Sri Lanka through potential turbulence. Julie Kozak, director of the IMF's communication department, emphasized the importance of resilience and reform during a press briefing last evening in Washington, D.C.
On the question about kind of the global situation and the impact on Sri Lanka, what I can say there is that, like for all countries, in an environment of high uncertainty around policy and in general, high global uncertainty, this poses, of course, risks to an economy like Sri Lanka's, as it does to many others. If some of the risks associated with high global uncertainty were to materialize, the way we will approach this with the authorities will be to work very closely with the authorities. First, to assess the impact of any downside risk that materializes, and then we will also work with the authorities to consider what are the appropriate policy responses within the contours of the program. And more broadly, for all countries, and including Sri Lanka, it's really critical for each country to sustain its own reform momentum. Sustaining reform momentum, both with macroeconomic policy reforms, but also importantly some of the growth-enhancing reforms that we were talking about earlier, is critical for all countries in our membership, including Sri Lanka.
Now, as Sri Lanka navigates a critical phase in its economic recovery, the International Monetary Fund has acknowledged the country's strong performance and its current reform programs. Now, Julie Kozak, once again the director of the IMF's Communications Department, emphasized that Sri Lanka's ambitious reform agenda is yielding commendable results. Now, in response to a question I posed last evening at the IMF media briefing, Julie Kozak said that the completion of the next review and access to the next tranche of the EFF funding remains contingent on the fulfillment of prior actions and executive board approval.
Hi, Julie. Zulfick Farzan from Newsfirst.
Yeah, Zulfick, please go ahead. Yep.
Thank you, Julie. My question is, recently Sri Lankan president announced that the existing IMF program is likely, they hope that it will be the final program for the country as it tries to achieve financial independence. What is the IMF's view on this? Is it achievable given the current situation in Sri Lanka? And what is the progress on the IMF board approval for the next review?
Zulfick, on your question regarding the president's remarks, I think there what I can simply say is to repeat that Sri Lanka has made commendable progress in implementing some very difficult but much needed reforms. These efforts are really starting to bear fruit. We see a remarkable rebound in growth following Sri Lanka's crisis. Inflation is low. International reserves are continuing to grow. Revenue collection on the fiscal side is improving, and the debt restructuring process is nearly complete. So I think it's really important to recognize, the significant efforts that Sri Lanka has taken and also the tremendous progress that has been made. Right now, of course, we are very much focused on the current EFF. And therefore, as I mentioned, it's going to be critical for Sri Lanka to sustain the reform momentum through the remainder of this EFF program.
That was Julie Kozak, the Director of Communications at the IMF. Now, the Ceylon Electricity Board has announced that generator number 1 at the Norchole coal power plant will be taken offline starting tonight for scheduled maintenance. According to CEB spokesperson Dhammika Wimalaratna, the maintenance process is expected to take approximately 25 days to complete. The temporary shutdown will result in a reduction of 300 megawatts to the national grid, a significant impact on Sri Lanka's power generation capacity. In a balancing move, the Kalanitissa combined cycle power plant, which had been inactive due to maintenance for the past 1.5 months, is scheduled to resume operations from midnight tonight. This reactivation will contribute 165 megawatts to the national grid. Now, Dhammika Wimalaratna, the CEB spokesperson, further explained that the timing of these maintenance activities was strategically planned, taking into account the current rainy weather conditions, which have improved the potential for hydroelectric power generation. Now, at the same time, Sri Lanka's Customs Department has confirmed the importation of 18,163 metric tons of salt into the country between May 22nd and June 7th. The total value of the imported salt stands at approximately 1.2 billion rupees. That's right, 1.2 billion. Authorities had previously announced plans to import up to 30,000 metric tons of salt to stabilize supply and prevent market disruptions. Now, so far this year, almost every week, we at Newsfirst have been reporting of fatal accidents that have plagued Sri Lanka and also resulting in the loss of life as well. Sri Lanka police say they have identified 773 locations across the country as high-risk zones for road accidents. According to police data, 340 of these locations fall under the jurisdiction of the Road Development Authority, or the RDA, while 156 are managed by the provincial RDA. The remaining 227 locations are overseen by various other institutions. Now, in addition to these high-risk zones, Sri Lanka police have also pinpointed 722 accident-prone hotspots where road accidents occur frequently. Of these, 329 are under the RDA, 150 are managed by the provincial RDA, and 243 fall under the control of other agencies. The Secretary to the President, Dr. Nandika Sanath Kumanayaka, has instructed relevant officials to provide the maximum support necessary to successfully hold the Global Bohra Community's Spiritual Assembly and Convention scheduled to take place later this month in Sri Lanka. The Secretary to the President issued these instructions during discussions held yesterday at the Presidential Secretariat regarding the Global Bohra Conference and Convention. The Bohra Conference and Convention will take place from the 27th of June to 5th July, coinciding with the Bohra Community's Spiritual Assembly, centered on the Bambalapitiya Bohra Mosque and the Sri Lanka Exhibition and Convention Center, with the participation of the community's spiritual leader, His Holiness Dr. Sayyidina Mufaddal Saifuddin Sahib. Approximately 15,000 members of the Bohra community from India and numerous other countries are expected to arrive in Sri Lanka for this convention and conference. Extensive discussions were held regarding the provision of all infrastructure facilities, including airport arrangements for these delegates. Now, you might have heard of Gammadda, which is a part of the Capital Maharajan Group. Now, a new water purification project will be officially launched today in Tullikodiripu, a village in the Pesale area of Mana, to provide clean drinking water to a community long affected by water scarcity. The village, home to many families dependent on the fishing industry, has struggled for years without access to safe drinking water. The saline nature of the local water sources have made life difficult for residents, particularly those whose livelihoods are already challenged by the harsh coastal environment. In response, Gammadda will lay the foundation stone for a reverse osmosis water purification system aiming to deliver clean water to the entire village swiftly and sustainably. The project is being carried out in memory of the late Dr. Tyagaraja Nagendran, a former resident of Rosemet Place, Colombo. It is sponsored by retired chartered accountant P. Sivendran and his wife, who currently reside in Velavata. Gammadda has pledged to complete the project quickly, ensuring that the people of Tullikodiripu no longer have to endure the hardship of living without clean drinking water. Now, the ICC Test Championship final is underway in England. The third day of the ICC Test Cricket World Championship final between Australia and South Africa will get underway today at the iconic Lord's Cricket Stadium, or the Lord's Cricket Ground, with Australia holding a commanding position. Batting first in their first innings, Australia posted a total of 212 runs. In response, South Africa struggled to gain momentum and were bowled out for just 138 runs, trailing by 74 runs. Australia began their second innings with determination. By the end of play yesterday, they had reached 144 runs for the loss of 8 wickets. Marnus Labuschagne contributed 22 runs, while a crucial 8-wicket partnership between Mitchell Starc and Alex Carey added 61 runs, helping to stabilize the innings. The match is being broadcast live on TV1 and is also available for streaming via www.sirasatv.lk, allowing fans across Sri Lanka to follow the action real time. And that brings an end to this week's edition of the Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfick Farzan. Until I meet you again next week with more developing stories and more interesting stories from Sri Lanka and across the world, take care and stay safe. If you want to follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube and TikTok, And for all the stories that I brought you now and for many more, visit our award-winning website www.newsfirst.lk. Stay safe and take care.